And they were joined in studio by Sam Smyth, the journalist in the Irish Independent, who was given the document, the false passport application form, by the Minister for Justice Michael McDowell. And of course Sam is a broadcaster as well with Today FM, where he has a very popular Sunday morning discussion programme. Sam, good morning to you.
Good morning, Eamon.
Sam, first of all, can I ask you about this document that I have in my hand that you published with your piece last Saturday week about this? The document is just an application which you and the Minister claim is a bogus application for a passport.
Yeah.
There's no...
Oh, I think it is a bogus.
Yeah, it is a bogus application. No, I'm sure. Is there anything to link this document to Frank Connolly?
Well, I suppose the main one was the photograph that was attached to it, which I'm assured by everyone who has seen the actual photograph that it is Frank Connolly.
Why didn't you publish the photograph?
Sorry?
Why didn't you publish that photograph?
I didn't have a photograph.
But who had photograph?
I think the photographs are retained by the... Sorry?
They must have been with the form.
No, they weren't from it. I got the photographs weren't with it. I did see a photocopy blown up to A4 size of a passport size photograph that was at that stage one. It wouldn't have been any reproduction. It looked like him, but I couldn't go into a jury and say, no, that's Frank Connolly. Okay. Those who saw the original passport-size photograph will stand in a stack of Bibles and say it's him.
I spoke to two of your colleagues in Abbey Street yesterday who'd seen it and said they didn't think it was him. But the point, let's go back to the fundamental point here. Your source for this story...
well, now, Eamon, just let's draw the line there. Whatever, a gentleman never mentions a ladies' room in the officers' mess, and I don't talk about sources.
No, but the Minister has the practice in journalism to corroborate any...
Sorry?
It's a practice in journalism when you're doing a story and allegations are being made, is it not? That you would corroborate. You'd need more than one source. Would you? For a story like this, in which you state, and I'll read the opening sentence. This is the application for a false passport that the head of the controversial Centre for Public Inquiry used to travel to Colombia.
Yeah.
That's an allegation that Connolly denies.
Yeah.
Your source for that was a single source, or did you corroborate it with somebody else?
I think it's sort of self-evident, Eamon, that a photograph attached to that passport. So I don't honestly know what you mean. Do you corroborate? I honestly believe that to be true.
Do you have one? Yes, I know that. But do you only have one source?
One source for
your belief.
I only got one copy of it.
You have...
well, I spoke to a number of people, if that's what you mean, yes. And one of the things I don't think there's any doubt about is that is an application.
Who are they?
I do not talk about my sources. I've already explained that.
I'm not asking you to identify your sources. I'm saying, were they people in the intelligence service? Were they guards?
I think the best way of getting around this, because I'm not going to get into sources, is I was satisfied when I published that story that every word I published was true. At the end of the day, I get it down to that. Do I believe this is true? I believe every word I published was true.
Undoubtedly you do, because you know the stakes are high, and you've made the point elsewhere that the laws of libel in this country are punitive.
Absolutely.
Do you know something, Sam, that the rest of... Do you know, Sam Smyth, something that the rest of us don't know?
About
Frank Connolly.
Listen, it's not just me. I think there's a widespread belief out there that this story is Frank Connolly. If you read what the Minister for Justice said yesterday, what the Taoiseach said, I believe... Do you know what it's like, Eamon? I suppose it's like the Northern Bank. I've heard you say, and I've heard others say, prove it. That's absolutely true. I honestly believe that the provisional IRA did the Northern Bank. I honestly believe Frank Connolly travelled to South America on a false passport. Okay. I think, for instance,
I'm not doubting the sincerity of your conviction.
Whoever got the passport that application procured travelled to Bogota in Colombia with two other people named in that they're on a passenger manifest of an Air France flight that left Paris for Bogota. Now, that is my understanding of that.
Yeah. What I want to ask you, and I don't doubt the sincerity of your conviction, what I'm asking you in the interest of our listeners, really, is this. How do you know that Frank Connolly did this? Because most of us, and I had Paul Anthony McDermott, we've had journalists, we've had politicians, we've had listeners, everyone wanting to know what the people that are asserting that he travelled know that the rest of us don't know. You are one, the Taoiseach is another, the Minister for Justice, you're three people who say, without any equivocation, that, and you're the most at risk here because you're a journalist and you could be sued for libel, that Frank Connolly travelled to Colombia. Frank Connolly says he didn't. He says so with equal certainty. What I want to know is, and I don't know, and our listeners don't know whether he did or not, I'm asking you a simple question. Do you possess information that is not in the public domain?
For instance, I'll say something to you now, and really don't press me in this any if you would. If you read the Irish Independent tomorrow, you might read something else, because we hope to bring the story on tomorrow.
You do?
Yeah, but
so you do, therefore, you do have knowledge that is not in the public domain yet.
At the minute, yeah. And, it only recently came to me, I can tell you. But, what we are talking about here, I believe that anybody's right in a criminal trial. There's no doubt about that. But, it's like, it's neither as unfair as the tribunals where somebody, makes an accusation against you, and Frank Connolly is in a position where I would really hate to be where he is at the minute. But he was asked in May 2002, would you please explain this? And one of the things to say, Eamon, even before he started the Centre for Public Interest, I believe he had a duty to, when you're in the business of asking very difficult questions of other people, as you know, if somebody asks you a question, now this is not a question about your personal life or something you can quite rightly say that's unfair. This is a very serious allegation.
Well, what question?
I think he should do them.
There are three questions. Yeah. He was asked if he travelled to Colombia.
He says no.
He was asked if he had used false documents.
Yeah,
he said no. And he was asked if he had filled this out, this passport application. He said no.
Yeah.
Now, the next question follows, because he has been put in a position now where he has to prove a negative. He's got to prove he wasn't somewhere. He has to answer for that time. Let's accept that. You enunciated a principle there a moment ago, that widespread public belief that a person had done something was sufficient to publish a damaging story about that person. Is this a principle that's going to apply in journalism in the future? In other words, if you or any other journalist,
in a matter of extreme public importance.
Just a moment, and let's get to the core of this now. I try to be fair to everybody.
Yeah, sure.
Without furnishing any evidence that Mr. Connolly has travelled anywhere, you can just state as a matter of fact that he did. I'm asking you, and you've admitted now that you have what might be considered evidence, but it's not in the public domain. Yeah. The minister has clearly said that if we know
evidence, you're also asking me to come up with a level of proof that the Gardaí can't come up with.
I'm asking you in the public interest to stand up the story that was published on Saturday the 26th of November in the Irish Independent, and this is the first sentence. This is the document.
That was the document.
Is the application for a false passport that the head of the controversial Centre for Public Inquiry, Frank Connolly, used to travel to Colombia.
Yeah.
Now, I couldn't have written that because I simply wouldn't have had the information upon this document, as you freely admit, doesn't prove anything.
Believe it or not, this
that with the story.
Sorry?
Why did you put that document up with the story?
I'll tell you why, because this story's been written since May 2002, Eamon. Time and time again, Frank Connolly has
denied it every time.
And refused to answer questions. So he started refusing to answer that particular question about that at that time.
So there is information. Why then have criminal charges not been laid against Mr. Connolly?
Eamon, how the hell could I know that?
I'm not Michael McDowell might have told you. You are friendly with Michael McDowell.
No more than, certainly not as friendly as you are with Johnny Giles, for instance. Maybe more Ray Tracy than Johnny Giles.
Is the Minister for Justice. Yes.
Well, he certainly is a better singer than the Minister for Justice, I will say that.
Now, let me ask you once again, the basis for publication of this and the basis for the Minister's contentions on the privilege in the Dáil. And to be fair to the Minister, he has talked to you in this piece you published outside of privilege.
Yeah.
You state that Frank Connolly visited Colombia with Padraig Wilson and with his brother Niall Connolly.
Yeah.
How do you know that?
I believe it to be the truth.
I'm
speaking to a number of people.
Audience there. How do you know?
As much as I know, I think, was the first to publish that I believe the Provisional IRA did the bank robbery in Belfast on August last year. There are some things, Eamon, you're talking here about a very serious matter.
How do you know that Frank Connolly travelled to Bogota?
Sorry?
How do you know that Frank Connolly travelled to Colombia?
From information received, I suppose, as a policeman would say in the box, from information received, I am utterly convinced.
And you're not prepared to say where that information came from, short of... I don't want you to identify
I'm not going to identify things.
But are you going to tell us where it came from? What sources were they... Did it come from politicians?
No, not necessarily. No, I mean, I spoke to a range of people. I'm not going to get narrowed down in this because what you're going to do is start knocking off one at a time. I'm utterly convinced.
So you're in a bit of the same situation as Frank Connolly, are you not?
Not really. Never been to Colombia. Never been involved.
You're refusing to answer questions, Sam.
Sorry?
I'm asking you a simple question. How do you know that Frank Connolly committed this criminal act? You've accused Frank Connolly of committing a criminal act. Listen, I want to know, and I think our listeners want to know, Sam. How do you know?
Sorry, how do you know?
Just answer the question, Sam. How do you know?
You've had Frank Connolly in here a few times. Why don't you ask him when he comes in?
I did ask him.
Where were you at that time?
No, I asked him if he had travelled to Colombia.
But you didn't ask him.
I didn't ask him because when he said he hadn't travelled to Colombia... And when he said that he'd never used false documents, I took his word. In exactly the same way as I said to you at the beginning of this interview, Sam, I have the highest respect for you, and when you tell me that your conviction about this matter is genuine, I will not question you. I believe that your conviction in this matter is genuine. So I'm treating you as exactly the same as I treat Frank Connolly or any other guest on this programme. I only represent the listeners of this programme. I have no personal axe to grind. Let me ask you this.
You're asking me, though, to provide you with a level of proof, which obviously I can't provide you.
But can you provide a scintilla?
What do you mean a scintilla?
Well, can you provide anything?
There is a document there. This came with a photograph.
This document is meaningless, Sam. You'll agree with that. That document on its own has no link with Frank Connolly.
It was an attempt to get, or it was an attempt, it actually got a fraudulent passport. That is a criminal act. It came attached with the photograph of Frank Connolly.
Well, let me ask you this
Whoever carried the passport that got had a photograph of Frank Connolly inside it. Whoever had that passport travelled to Bogota.
Right. Let me ask you this question.
Do you not accept that?
I will accept everything you say.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this question.
Sure.
The photograph would appear to be the damning fact here.
Yeah.
Right. Can I ask you again why you didn't, when you acquired this document, which in itself is meaningless, why you didn't also acquire...
How do you mean it's meaningless?
Well, there's no link with Frank Connolly. Where is the photograph?
Well, I just said it's an application for a passport.
Where's the photograph?
A false passport. The photograph that was on that was of Frank Connolly.
And did the person who possessed this document possess the photograph?
Well, whoever possessed... Sorry.
Did the person who gave you this document...
Obviously, yes, of
Why
course
didn't they give you the photograph? They did give you the photograph. You have the photograph, don't you?
I've explained that to you.
You have got the photograph, haven't you?
No, I explained to you that...
Have you got the photograph?
Which question?
The question is this.
Yeah.
Have you or have independent newspapers got that photograph?
Not the photograph, no.
What have you got then?
Well, we explained it earlier.
An image.
Jesus, just give me a minute.
Take your time.
What I explained earlier was, what I saw was a passport-size photograph blown up to A4 size and photocopied.
And why didn't you publish that so that... You told me that you were
that the quality number one would never have gone. It wouldn't have stood up to reproduction.
It wouldn't.
No, it wouldn't. No.
So, is there some uncertainty as to whether the person in that photograph is Frank Connolly or not?
Well, the version of the photograph that I saw looked like Frank Connolly. I could say, but I could certainly not go in on any jury and say that's Frank Connolly and bang him up.
So, hold on, let's establish now. So, what you're telling us now is that you couldn't go before a court of law and swear to the fact that Frank Connolly, who you know as well as me,
Not quite.
Well, more or less. You couldn't say that a person you've known for 25 years in this town, that this was that person.
Well, the person I saw, the photograph, the photocopy of it, I can say it looked like Frank Connolly. However, the original of that photograph, people who I would know have no reason to lie to me that I can think of are absolutely convinced. I also believe that not only was the photograph used for identification, but that there were some sort of forensic expertise used to establish that it was Frank Connolly. Now, obviously, I'm not in possession of that.
Well, can I ask you this question then? If they had to use forensics to establish that this was Frank Connolly, surely there must be considerable doubt about the...
Well, now, my expertise in forensics now would be something the same as yours, I suspect.
It would be. There's some of these photographs that are unclear, and whereas...
No, I don't think
what
that.
No, what you're saying...
Well, forensics can mean several. One is expertise. People who know about physiognomy, for instance, i.e., that is the features in this and so on, i.e., it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, therefore it is a duck. Somebody then comes in and explains why it's a duck. I don't think it is, as you think, photo enhancement or anything.
The original source or the information that you have, that you believe that has led you to believe that Frank Connolly committed a crime.
Well, the sources, actually.
Did it originate with the Gardaí, or did it originate with the Colombian intelligence services?
Neither.
Did it originate with the CIA?
No.
Did it originate with the CIA?
No.
Well, let me ask you then a final question about the passport photo. What sort of a passport photo would need a forensics expert to recognise the subject of the photo?
That's, yes, you see, I think you might have misheard me. And what I said was, it doesn't need an expert to recognise it. What you do have is experts on physiognomy will say, that is a nose, pointing out the number of similarities and so forth, so that you just don't have to say, that looks like him. They can tell you why exactly it is him and so forth. That's what I'm told. But this is not photo enhancement.
This must have been some photographs, sir.
Well, I'll tell you something, Eamon. As much, I suppose, as you can be sure that anybody did anything without thinking, Frank, I believe, has serious questions to answer, and I believe you should answer them.
Well, let me ask you a question for the 10th time. The information that you possess...
You're going to ask me about sources again?
No, I'm not. I'm going to... The information that you possess that makes you so certain, shouldn't it be in the public domain so that we can all make an informed judgment as to Mr. Connolly's innocence or guilt in this matter?
Well, Eamon, I'm with you on that. I do believe, I'm not one to start criticising government ministers because they give too full an answer in the Dáil or anything like that. I have no doubt about that.
You've no doubt then that the information that you possess that allows you to form the conviction that you formed in public.
A very serious thing, because...
Very serious. Do you believe that the rest of us, that the public in particular, should have that information so that we can form a judgment as to Mr. Connolly's guilt or innocence? And would I add a rider to that? Can I add a rider to that, Sam?
Sorry?
Can I add a rider to that? That Frank's career now lies in ruins and his reputation has been destroyed. Isn't it fair that the public, and indeed his peers in this profession, should know on what basis he's in that position?
He is, but Eamon, do you know something? There's only one person in Ireland today who could make Michael McDowell resign. Paradoxically, that's Frank Connolly. Frank Connolly came forward and said, in that particular week, in April 2001, I was in Taunton in Somerset with my kids doing whatever. Michael McDowell would have to resign straight away. So that is the position. Michael McDowell has put his fate in the hands of Frank Connolly at the minute. Frank Connolly is the one who can take him out.
Okay, just final question before we wrap, Sam. The prospect, that you saw a document, this document, you were given by the minister, or you were given by your source.
Yep.
Did you see the whole file?
No.
That's all you saw?
I asked for a document. I got a document. That is
okay.
The be all and end.
Sam Smyth, broadcaster and journalist par excellence.